Hey, yeah, recording is in progress. I'm about to share, and here we go. A very, very warm welcome to you all this morning. I'm delighted that you could join us for your essential guide to keeping children safe in education 2025. It's a pleasure to have you here. For anybody who isn't here but is signed up, you'll be able to be listening to this um, on the recording. And a few things about us. Well, I know we have many familiar faces joining us this morning for this session as we approach the start of the academic year. But for if you don't know either Emma or me, we are essentially the core team at the Essential Safeguarding Company. We are supported by a number of associates whom we're very proud to have on board, including a social worker, an early years specialist, and a probation specialist. But our central mission is helping you to help others. And between Emma and me alone, we have over 20 years' experience in education safeguarding. It is one of our key passions in life, and we love being able to support you. We support people right across the education sector, although predominantly in primary schools and colleges, also in early years and universities and private training providers as well, which is a real privilege for us to be able to do. And some of the ways in which we help you to help others include around supervision support for the designated safeguarding leads and deputies and safeguarding teams, whom we support across the different parts of the education sector, in training for DSLs, deputy DSLs, governors, indeed, staff safeguarding teams, and also for some students, and particularly in settings with older students. And consultancy support, including audits. We do investigation support, incident response, and mediation. And one of the things we did, and we're really proud to be able to do in the previous academic year, was roll out our Empowering Parents programme as well, providing key insights and support to empower parents to better understand aspects of safeguarding which are so relevant to their children around gamification, online safety, boundary setting, incel awareness, and so on. And that programme is expanding in the academic year ahead. So a wide range of ways in which we provide support, but specifically today, this safeguarding spotlight will be taking us through the key changes to keeping children safe in education for the academic year ahead. As those of us who work in education know, this is our key statutory guidance for what we must do to be able to keep children and vulnerable adults safe in our care. And where it talks about must and should are the things that we should also be doing, and only in exceptional circumstances are there reasons to not be doing so. We'll take a quick look at some of the statute changes which are coming as well and their anticipated impact on the safeguarding work that we do. I thought it might be useful to have a bit of an insight into some of the key safeguarding trends this year, as reported nationally, but also some of the things which we have noticed through our support for you and others across the education sector as well. And then some thoughts about how we proactively safeguard children. It's all very well knowing that there are certain issues that are live and potentially expanding, but what can we proactively do to help to protect children? And we know that our proactive work is a really key aspect of the safeguarding that we do. So that's the essence of today's spotlight. And to reassure you, we will be continuing with our safeguarding spotlight sessions throughout this academic year, which will be taking place approximately every half term as we come across really interesting speakers whom we think you would enjoy, and get a lot of value out of listening to. They will all be provided as complimentary as part of our wider support to clients and others who choose to join us for those safeguarding spotlight sessions. That's something that we love to be able to do. Right then, the absolute nub of it, the summary of key changes for keeping children safe in education 2025. There are five key elements which I will take us through one by one, but these are the five things to note right now. Some important changes and a renewed focus on online safety. And I would imagine given your experiences in the previous academic year, it's probably of no surprise that there is a renewed focus on this in the year ahead. Not only now do we have all of the old kind of things that we were dealing with, but we have got AI that we're dealing with as well. And this time last year, I remember um, predicting that this would be our next big thing that will be taking up a lot of our time and attention, and indeed it already is. I think it was last year, there were 500,000 deep fake images generated using generative AI, which caused great distress to those who were subject to those fake images. In this year alone, that figure is expected to reach 8 million. And this is for the UK alone, 8 million deep fake images. So this is growing exponentially as an aspect, a central aspect of our safeguarding work. Next up, and I'm going to look at that in a little bit more detail, but filtering and monitoring. There's an expansion of our responsibilities around this, linked to AI. There are some clarifications, further clarifications building on last year around alternative provision. And then number four, children absent from education and the expectations on us. And then virtual head responsibility. So let's take a look now at each of these in turn. So, in terms of online safety, keeping children safe in education has broadened the definition to include misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories. And just to be absolutely clear on the distinction between misinformation and disinformation, misinformation is if we share something in the mistaken belief that something is true when it actually isn't. So there's a sense of intentionality behind this. And as my son likes to remind me, I myself have been subject to mistakenly believing some images to be true when in fact they were false. And he likes to describe it as having been Facebook mummed, which is slightly patronizing, but probably true in my case, where I have sometimes greeted him to say, "Oh, James, look at this beautiful image of these dolphins." He's like, "That's so ridiculous, Mum. That's clearly AI." Well, to these eyes, it was not. And so it's very easy for us to get hooked in and believe certain things to be true, which are, to the more discerning eye, blatantly not. Whereas disinformation is the very deliberate spreading of information which is known to be false. And the purpose of doing so is to spread potentially hatred, fear, confusion, and potentially to undermine democracy. Certainly, there is evidence which has been proven in a court of law to determine that when, for example, it came to the Brexit referendum, disinformation being sent out from Russian bots and hackers was leading to disinformation, which undermined some of the arguments and information about, whether to leave or remain. We're not going to revisit that argument. I'm merely using it as a source of example as the way in which disinformation can be used, particularly if there are those out there around the world who wish to undermine democracy, the rule of law, and the ways in which we are able to distinguish fact from fiction. Many of us will have heard conspiracy theories. Some of them are rather funny or fun to entertain, but some can potentially be very, very damaging. We know that there were all sorts of conspiracy theories on the World Wide Web last summer, which helped to lead to the conflagration in Southport and the riots that followed. So conspiracy theories can actually be incredibly deeply damaging, harmful, and downright dangerous. So there is a much greater focus on this year. Next up, filtering and monitoring. This has been expanded to include the appropriate use of generative AI. I am curious, maybe if you put in the chat, I can't see it myself, but Emma will be able to have a look. How many of you are now regularly using generative AI? If you are, say yes. It'll be interesting to see. I certainly know Emma is, and she's become quite a whiz at this. I myself use it only occasionally. I have this like nervousness. It's an eco nervousness, I think, in part. Conscious of all of the electricity and then water that is being used to use AI. And I also know that this is probably putting me in the category of Luddite because of the concerns that I have around that. And I can almost use it for special occasions. Whereas 80% of teenagers are using AI, and I think in the months ahead, I will just need to get with the program and figure out how to offset the environmental damage being used by the use of AI, because those of us who are not yet fully using it are missing out on some very significant hacks, I suppose, life hacks for making life easier and more beneficial, to be able to create important, respectful, relevant content easily. But there are, of course, those who will use this with malign intent, and generative AI is being used, as 'twas ever thus in the way that things happen. The internet can be used for amazing connection and goodness and positivity and sharing great messages. But it can also be used to create really lifelike, vile images of people engaged in all sorts of activities that I'm sure many of us don't even want to think about. So now, as DSLs, we are being required to make sure that our filtering and monitoring systems are fit for purpose to capture rogue imagery that is being generated, potentially generated by AI, to filter it out and provide an effective firewall against things which would be so harmful and upsetting to see and have spread, of a
Judy.
violent nature. Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I thought you'd finished your sentence. I've got two emails for people asking to be let in, please, and also 7 people in the chat said yes, they do use AI. So if we can
Thank you.
grant access to those 2 people, but yeah, lots of people using AI. I think it's really useful, really good tool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I realised why I didn't see them because it was on a separate screen for me. So I'm admitting all now. Thank you. Can I just check if you can still see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Can. Okay, so you can see the summary of key changes with generative AI.
Yes.
Brill. Thank you so much. As long as you can, that is really good. Um, Right, next up, alternative provision. So by show of hands, how many of you have had in the previous academic year children out on AP somewhere, anywhere, young people? Okay, so I'm seeing nods as well as a show of hands. Great. Because the beauty of having paused for a moment there is I can now see many of you as well as seeing my other screen, which is fab. So additional and clarified points around alternative provision. If you are sending children out to alternative provision, it is vital that you ask that provision to give you written confirmation that they have all appropriate safeguarding policies and procedures in place. Not only that there's a safeguarding policy, a whistleblowing policy, clear procedures for making a referral in the event of a concern, but that they have appropriate DBS checks in place, site safety, that they've got appropriate kind of fire hazard, critical incident things in place. You need written confirmation that they have all of that. And there is a requirement upon you to have regular meetings with the setting to check in around the progress of the young people who are going to that setting, but also checking in on safeguarding arrangements that they're being met, and checking in on attendance as well. So this is really important. It builds on the really useful clarifications that there were in the previous academic year around where responsibilities sit with AP. Ultimately, if the child is on our roll, we remain responsible for checking that all appropriate safeguards are in place for them when they go to that setting, and also which sites the setting has, because it may be that the AP provider says that their central address is this, but do they have other settings? Where might the child actually be going to when they're with the AP? So this is a really important set of clarifications, and also power to your elbow to make sure that you can ask for these things in detail, because you have every right to know where the children are and all of the details that link to that. I can see a few questions coming up in the chat. I'm going to invite Emma to crack on with responding to some of those as best she's able. And if there's anything lingering at the end, I'll absolutely gladly pick them up. Next up, then, point number 4, children who are absent from education. We must make sure that we have timely registers. Now, I know for some of you, you'll be thinking, well, of course we do. But I know, and I've also seen in a very small number of settings, that sometimes that isn't as timely as it could be. And the registers for schools do need to go off to the DfE daily, so that we're very clear about children's attendance. For we know that attendance can give us crucial insights into vulnerabilities with children. We need to be looking at patterns. Why are they always seemingly absent on a Monday morning, or then not only a Monday morning, but a Tuesday morning on the fourth Tuesday of every month? Looking for patterns. What's it telling us? Being curious, asking questions, digging a bit deeper about what's going on in the life of that child. If they're not at school, where are they? Who are they with? Why are they not attending? And we know that vulnerability can be leading to lack of attendance, but then lack of attendance augments vulnerability. So this is a really crucial piece. And then virtual head teacher responsibilities have been expanded to include those who are in kinship care. So for children who are perhaps living for a time with grandparents, aunts, uncles, it could be a much older sibling who's been given the kinship care responsibility. And the virtual head teacher will be working with you as a school or as a college setting to monitor the attendance of such pupils and tracking their progress and checking in on safeguarding arrangements. I think this is a really sensible development and offers greater wraparound care for the child. So those are our 5 crucial changes. But linked to this, and it really does make the point this year, that there are some key changes in our relationships and sexual health education, not only in the primary sector, but also thinking about PSHE when it comes to secondary and colleges, which are important and inextricably link to wider proactive safeguarding that I want to take us through. And even if you're not in the primary sector when I cover this, or you're not in the secondary sector as I cover that, hopefully it will prompt some thoughts around the curriculum offer that you have, and is what you currently have and what you've devised fit for purpose, and how might it be reshaped in the year ahead to really help to make sure that we're proactively safeguarding. So firstly, key changes for the primary sector around online safety and awareness. And given that online safety is now such an augmented feature of keeping children safe in education, and it's one of the key safeguarding trends with concerns around this in the past 12 months, no surprise that we're being asked to review online safety and awareness arrangements, including the dangers of image sharing and how to get help. It never ceases to amaze me, actually, particularly when I talk to pupils or students in older settings, just how naive sometimes they really are around the sharing of images and what this means. And particularly around, legalities for their age of sharing and the vulnerability that this can lead to. So we can't stipulate enough how important it is that young people understand the law and about how to get help on this. And then when it comes to general well-being, there's a greater emphasis that we're being encouraged to have on the emotional impact of change for children, of loss, of bereavement, so that we can really help children to express a wider range of feelings. This is about emotional literacy and deepest personal development, to be welcomed, I think. And then furthermore, well-being online, which was previously called online harm, now encourages us to focus on gaming addiction, even at this very young age, where it can start, the monetization of games, scams, and financial fraud. And Emma did a really vital piece around this when, as part of last year's Empowering Parents sessions around gamification and the implications for children of all ages, but even starting very young. So well-being online and this wider understanding, not only for pupils, but for us who support the pupils and for parents, is absolutely critical. And then around personal safety with really practical education on real world situations. And we're told that this should include things around road safety, railway safety, and water safety. And then when it comes to developing bodies, understanding more around personal boundaries and being able to invoke personal boundaries and appropriate privacy as well. What is right to share and not right to share, how children can feel about that, and how they're absolutely at liberty to say what is not right for them, and using correct language for body parts. We know this fits in so vitally with safeguarding, so that we empower children with language to be able to say what is happening to them and what they like or don't like, particularly when it comes to the privacy of their bodies. Now, when it comes to the secondary sector, and there'll be aspects of this which are still relevant, and thinking about for the primary sector as well, key changes for the curriculum linked to safeguarding is a greater focus on respectful relationships, which now includes a bigger focus on consent, sexual ethics, because we know that our young people are looking increasingly at porn and are developing perhaps a warped sense of relationships and power and control that exists between those individuals in relationship to one another, and raising awareness about online groups, including incel and misogyny. We then have online safety awareness and reminding of the dangers of deep fake images, sextortion, where perhaps people are being blackmailed to share images, or if they don't pay up and pay certain amounts of money, images of them will be shared. And it's horrible, horrible stuff. But we certainly know of young people in the previous 12 months who have been subjected to this. It's really important that we empower our young people to understand the law, to understand about image sharing and where to get help. There's been a significant expansion, which is why I've emphasised that here, around being safe when it comes to sexual pressure, violence, sexual harassment, domestic violence, grooming, criminal and financial exploitation, FGM, forced marriage. I thought this was interesting as well, on strangulation and suffocation as criminal offences, safety in public spaces. And that means, having the liberty to be able to walk around and be free from people catcalling, name calling, shouting out, eyeing people up, others watching inappropriate imagery around us in public spaces, and harmful sexual behaviour in young people. I noticed actually, I mean, over the previous few weeks, I had cause to visit a hospital, and I noticed they'd got a really focused set of safeguarding posters about strangulation and suffocation and the law and what to look out for. And I was like, this is a real change of emphasis to make sure that we as professionals have a greater understanding of that, and that we educate our young people as well. Furthermore, under the bracket of health and well-being, when it comes to the curriculum, mental health, and not only young people understanding what we mean by depression or anxiety or PTSD or other aspects of mental health, such as bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and so on. But actually, it starts with understanding that loneliness, worry, feeling low can be part of the human condition, and how we can look to manage our own moods as quickly and effectively as we can, as we begin to notice these things, and to perhaps be able to better understand that these things, that the feelings are not necessarily the truth. They won't last forever, but they're there in that moment, and how to sit with discomfort sometimes. But also dealing with gambling and substance misuse as part of some of the issues that can affect mental health. Well-being online is we're noticing this as a new descriptor, a new mode of language for us to be aware of. This again focuses around misinformation, disinformation, exploitation, and how to report when we have concerns. I Personal point here, I'm really pleased to see that vaping now has a greater emphasis sitting alongside drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, because I feel sure from, what we see all around us with our own eyes, with massive rise in vaping, that people just are not aware of the implications of vaping for their health. So that's a really important aspect. And then, final aspect of this in terms of the expansion of understanding in the curriculum, health protection and prevention, understanding the role of the pharmacist, which is interesting, and trying to help young people to understand that they can go at an early stage to see a pharmacist and don't have to wait for a GP or necessarily a sexual health clinic appointment for certain aspects. More on pregnancy health, including miscarriage and loss, and Gillick competence for sexual health, which I think is really positive. And around personal safety, the work that we do with our young people on understanding conflict, recognizing exploitation, understanding how to handle ourselves effectively, handling risk, knife crime, and wider exploitation. And then, as with the primary sector, when it comes to developing bodies, using more empowered language, but at an older age, also talking about menstruation, gynecological, and reproductive health. So, lots for us to take on board there. And as I know many of you do, as designated safeguarding leads, you are absolutely linking in with the PSHE curriculum. But if you have others who are devising the curriculum with you, and of course there'll be many others who are delivering, it's so important to keep looking at the curriculum and asking, is this fit for purpose? What trends are we noticing within school, locally, nationally, and how can we be shaping the curriculum to fit need, not only reacting to things that are happening, but then proactively looking ahead at how we can empower our children and young people. And thinking about proactively empowering some of the legislative changes which are coming up, which will have an impact on the way in which we safeguard, are as follows. So the Online Safety Act came into effect in 2023, but it was only last month that the protocols around having websites which are aimed at children or which children can access, being required to have age assurance and access controls to content. So this is, if you like, a live feature of safeguarding which has come into effect this summer, and perhaps a prompt for us to do more work with children and young people around the implications of this for them, and understanding why there are access controls and age content requirements, because the whole purpose of the Online Safety Act is to help us to protect children from harmful and illegal content. And there are new criminal offences for giving children access to such inappropriate and harmful content, with a real requirement on those who provide content to make sure that those age restrictions and checks are in place. So more power to the elbow here with the Online Safety Act. What it requires from us is making sure that we educate children, that we educate staff and parents in online usage and the law, including all of the following. So why these restrictions matter, their nature and purpose, how to report harmful content and seek help, and proactively staying safe online to prevent harm. And what we will be doing throughout this year is providing important links and guidance and supplementary resources to help you with this very stuff. So more on that to follow. Then we've got the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, which is coming up this autumn. It's expected to be implemented in the autumn. We haven't yet got a specific date, but almost certainly, although never say never, in case there are some last minute amendments to the bill, these things will be coming into effect. I personally welcome them. And they include the fact that education will be included in multi-agency safeguarding arrangements. All too often, health, the police, and the local authority have had primacy when it comes to local safeguarding board arrangements. the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is likely to have a much greater role for us in education. And given that we, more than any of the other sectors, spend more time with the children and young people, I think this makes lots of sense. But it will put a real responsibility on us to be engaging in those multi-agency arrangements, both at strategic level and operationally. So perhaps for some of us, depending on the volume of children that we have on vulnerable watch, more for us to be involved with. And local authorities are likely to be required to involve in setting up multi-agency child protection teams and a new phraseology there for us perhaps to start to get used to. And one of the things I think is really good is that the local authority is likely to need to give consent if a parent requests for a child to be home educated and that child is on a child protection plan or they're subject to inquiry, they won't be allowed to be off-rolled and to go into home education until there has been involvement with the school and the local authority, schools, and when I say schools, also colleges, to be involved in risk assessing that as well. And they won't be allowed to enter into that without local authority assent. And I would hope, I'm sure many of you would, in the vast majority of cases, that such assent would not be given. We want to keep our eyes on those children. And we have to, is likely to be coming into effect, keep a register of children not in school. We need to cooperate with the local authority on any child this is removed from school, not just those subject to a child protection plan or inquiry, and review, therefore, our off-rolling practices so that we are doing the very best that we need to do in accordance with what's going to come into effect. When it does come into effect, we shall be sure to provide you with blog updates and in our online community space and any training that we're delivering at that time with all of the latest and final information about what the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill means for all of us this autumn. So watch this space on that. We will update you, but this is the heads up on what to expect. And then we've got the Crime and Policing Bill, which is due to come into effect in the autumn as well, which is set to require mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse. And this is in response, and there was an announcement by the government in January, actually, by the Home Secretary, in response to the failures of young people, very vulnerable young people, more than a decade ago in Rotherham, Oldham, and elsewhere, of the lack of reporting of child sexual abuse concerns by many professionals. There will be mandatory reporting. And if any of us should have a concern that a child has been subjected to abuse or might be vulnerable to abuse and we fail to report it, we can be prosecuted. And this is as with forced marriage as well. So a really, really important change forthcoming in legislation. And, we know from working with many of you that, you wouldn't dream of not reporting any such concerns. But for anybody who's more hesitant, the law is now firmly behind nudging people to do the right thing, even if they are hesitating. And there will be new offences coming up around the generation of child sexual abuse materials using AI and measures on offensive weapons, including knives. So again, we will provide much more detail on this when it comes into effect so that you can understand the implications for you in your schools and college settings. So, trends in safeguarding, a quick overview of trends and some of the things for us to be thinking about as we step into a new year of proactively safeguarding children. Financial hardship is a predominant cause of safeguarding concern in the UK. I think some of these figures that I'm sharing with you are staggering, but some of the latest figures that we've been able to gain access to. So financial hardship, 30% of children in the UK are living in poverty. That's as of 2023, and the latest figures as published by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Staggering number of children, and we know if children are living in poverty, if they've got hungry bellies, they feel like they can't be included in activities, they haven't necessarily got appropriate clothing, or a safe space to be able to study, to rest, and get encouragement and support, life is going to be so much harder for them. So 30%, and I know this won't be reflected in all of the composition of the schools and colleges, but as a national figure, I think it's really shocking actually, and points to the challenges that we face in safeguarding such vulnerable children. We know that vulnerability doesn't rest alone with poverty, but it's certainly a very big challenge for children. And a quarter of parents last year were unable to provide sufficient food for their children. It's a shocker. And the number of children living in temporary accommodation has increased by 80% in the decade. Just imagine that. So if children are living in temporary accommodation, and there are more than 100,000 such children in the UK, then they might be living in unsafe conditions, surrounded by adults, in hostels who've got mental health conditions, hardship themselves, perhaps are abusing substances. It's awful to think that they're in such conditions and might be impacting their commute to get to school or college, and their overall well-being. So for us to be mindful of this and thinking all the time about how can we seek to include and make life that little bit more supportive and enjoyable for children who are experiencing such financial hardship. Online harm is the next significant trend. No surprise, I am sure, but to know that there has been a 380% increase in reports to the Internet Watch Foundation between 23 and 24 around AI child sexual abuse material, it really kind of pulls us up short about what we're going to be facing, particularly as I mentioned to you, the projection is that we'll have 8 million deep fake images produced in the UK alone this year. This really, I think, kind of, pulls us up short about what we need to be prepared for and the work that we need to be proactively doing to be safeguarding our young people. And four teenagers in every class, imagine an average class of 30, have experienced a nude deep fake. That's really shocking, I think. And so there's a lot for us to be doing proactively around this piece, which I'll come on to speak to in just a moment. And when it comes to mental health, we've had more than 1 million children be referred to mental health services, double the amount that it was 7 years before. And it is the top concern for those who are contacting Childline. And this comes as no surprise from, the stuff that Emma and I have done throughout the previous 12 months, supporting many of you in supporting others. Mental health for our young people and parents is a predominant concern. But also, there's one of the things that Childline have pointed to is rising issues around anger and dysregulation. And the more we can do to support young people around providing zones of regulation and being able to speak to their feelings and be able to self-regulate is going to be absolutely vital. And then kind of hurts my heart a bit to know how big a deal this is when you think that so much has happened to progress understanding around equality between genders. We are reminded that progress is not linear and that we have a fight on our hands when it comes to gender-based sexism and violence. So everything to do with harming, controlling, or diminishing people based on their gender. Um, I I find it concerning for us, and again, it's a call to action that nearly 50% of 11 to 21-year-old girls feel less safe as a result of sexism compared to what they did a decade ago. So nearly 50% of 11 to 21-year-old girls and women, and 33% of teen children saying they've seen material encouraging violence against women or girls. So a third, essentially, of teen children. What kind of messages are those giving? And the person many of us in safeguarding love to hate, Andrew Tate, is admired by more than half of 16 to 17-year-olds. Important to note that a fifth of them have a negative view of him. There are lots of people kind of perhaps who don't have a view in between, but we are going to need to keep working to counter the relentless stuff that is happening online when it comes to gender-based sexism and violence. So what do we do? And there's lots that we do. There's lots that you're doing. There's lots that we will do. And we carry on in this sphere because it matters so very much. Embedding a positive safeguarding culture in everything that we do. And this that can sound so glib to say, but it feels to me more real than ever before when so many of the dangers are happening online and in the world outside of school or college, making sure that we provide a safe space where everybody not only knows it's their responsibility to safeguard, but acts it out and lives and breathes it, and everything that they do is critical. And prioritizing relationship and social and health education and sex education for our children so that we are empowering them as citizens and in their private lives and their relationships with others is fundamental. And that inextricable link between safeguarding and the curriculum. Listening to and acting on pupil voice, checking in regularly, might be with, the student council, with focus groups, in surveys, just listening to what our pupils and students are telling us, having worry boxes in classrooms and suggestion boxes in colleges. All of those things matter massively. And key to this, and it's writ large in keeping children safe in education, engaging relentlessly with parents and carers. And there is stuff that we can certainly support you with around that, either in bite-sized training or our empowering parents workshops that start at the end of September, will be running right through until May, expanding on the topics which parents told us they found so very useful last year, making sure that our policies and procedures are updated. And if you need any support around this, when it comes to making sure now that your policies on IT and safeguarding appropriately cover digital safety and generative AI, give us a shout if you need any support with that at all, and monitoring and evaluating what's going on. Final kind of thoughts around this. This is so important, embedding critical thinking and really encouraging our children, young people, and parents to ask, what's the source of this information that I'm looking at? Thinking about misinformation or disinformation. Why is this being shared? What's the purpose of this? Who is sending this information out into the world? How does it serve them? Why do they wish to influence me? What do they want me to do as a consequence? How does this make me feel? All of those things, the questioning, they're not just accepting things on face value. All of these things are going to become absolutely critical, especially for those of us who, like me, still see some pictures of cute animals and go, oh, that's so lovely, and think it's real, and it blatantly is not. And teaching specific laws and responsibilities around AI. And we'll be doing loads more on this in the next 12 months. Teaching overall responsibility and accountability, the ethics of how we interact with others in our private sphere and in the public sphere, reframing behaviour as well through the trauma-informed lens, so that some of the very hard to love features of behaviour that we might see and experience, we're not asking, why are they doing this? Actually, what has happened to this person to mean that they are behaving in this way, to allow us to come at things from a place of compassion and therefore greater patience and care and curiosity, monitoring trends and intervening as early as we can, and embedding this whole school approach to healthy relationships. And I saw a very good steer on this actually in the past week. I sit on a safeguarding scrutiny panel for the local diocese, and the chair kind of referred to some newly recruited members of the safeguarding team for the diocese as the angels of the man who happens to be leading the team. And then she swiftly went on to correct herself and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for kind of seeking to reinforce old, haggard stereotypes around, and which might have inadvertently undermined the very professional role that these women are playing in the support that they're offering. And so it's catching ourselves in the language we use and in the kind of attitudes and behaviors that those can appear to exhibit and purport, and the culture that creates. We all make mistakes. We all unwittingly say and do things that we perhaps haven't thought about and didn't mean. When we realize it, we realize it in others, and having a gentle word, because those words and those behaviors matter so much. This is what underscores culture and how people feel and how included they feel, how trusting they feel, and are able to trust us to be able to make a difference on their behalf. And then embedding the healthy relationships is vital. Because fundamentally, we know that we all care. And so I encourage us as we go into the academic year ahead and we take on board those key changes to keeping children safe in education and the curriculum and what's coming up in terms of legislation, to keep kind of four key aspects to what we do. Curiosity. Why? I wonder. I wonder. Empathy, to try and step into the shoes of the person or persons we're thinking about, seeking to include wherever possible the language we use, the behaviors we use, the activities that we undertake, and so that we can act with compassion and patience. We invite you to stay connected. If Emma hasn't already shared some of the resources in the chat, I know that she will be doing so as I speak. We've got a new online community that we invite you to join. I know that some of you have, but using a Facebook community group, and believe you me, we agonized long and hard over whether to use Facebook or any other platform, but we could not find an appropriate alternative platform that would give people access in the way that we wanted, to the resources, the links, the real-time kind of guidance that we wanted to. So we've been lingering in other online communities and figuring how to make them safe and monitored. All comments and things will be monitored before they're uploaded, and giving people the opportunity to share some things anonymously as well if they feel appropriate and necessary to seek guidance or share some things that they're concerned about. It is not a replacement for supervision. It is definitely a replacement for our half-termly newsletter, and it's going to be our real-time place to go to for news, resources, links, and wider advice and support. And we really invite you to join if you are on Facebook to do so. And even if you don't use Facebook, but you kind of think for this purpose, set up a kind of profile. If you keep it as, private as you wish. You could be Joe Blogs if you want to be, but if you would find joining the essential safeguarding community useful online, please do join us. And we'll update on all of the statute stuff and other things as they happen in real time throughout this academic year. This is where you can also find out about what's coming up next with our Empowering Parent workshops, and we'll be providing more information on that. Do feel free to sign up. And our coaching and mentoring for DSLs program, which starts in early October, the bite-sized training sessions all year round, where we'll be digging deep into safeguarding detail, but doing it fast. So you've got that available for your teams. And these kind of complementary safeguarding spotlight sessions will be available every half term. So please do follow what we're doing. Join up with the online community. You can find us on LinkedIn and on Facebook with our general Facebook page as well, and on safeguardingco.co.uk. And we will seek in this next academic year to share as liberally as we can to support you as much as possible with everything safeguarding. That is it for now. That is your essential update. Are there any questions or comments for me to attend to that I didn't quite see or catch? And Emma was hot on the ball with while I was going through that.
A few popped up around the AP requirements, Trudie. So we were just discussing in the chat whether it's a statutory requirement for schools to check attendance at an AP, and it's a little bit woolly actually around the legislation, but we've decided that yes, absolutely schools do need to be checking that. And I've said even if it's not because of statutory guidance, it's always best practice to have it in your policy anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it can be, so any absences need to be recorded effectively, so with the correct code, etc. And then we also had a question around whether work experience falls under that AP umbrella, and whether it's exactly the same. And I said it can be treated in the same way. It doesn't sit quite the same, does it? I've just been reading through
No,
actually, which is why I'm
no,
glad you've asked. But it could be
no.
treated the same in terms of internal procedures,
Yes,
and checking
practice.
what policies are in place. Yeah, and making
Yeah,
sure that they're adhering to our policies.
yeah, good. Yeah, it's best practice, and I think that makes real sense. And if you want any support at all with that, and for us to take a look at anything that you're doing, we're very, very happy to. Good. Anything else?
I have put some links in there as well. So anyone that is on Facebook, if you want to join us, I'm just approving some new members now, which is very exciting to see new faces in there.
Hey, good. That is great. And I can see that Emma is so fast on approving our new members joining that I sometimes get those notifications on my phone, and no sooner do I go to say yes, and she's done it. She's like lightning. So yeah, we'd love to see you there. And and it feels quite exciting that we know we're going to be sharing things in a much more dynamic way with you. It started to feel a bit sometimes from my perspective, like when we were coming to do the newsletter, no sooner will we sending stuff out than life moves on. Life moves on very fast these days. So we'll be sharing real time, which is great. So, thank you for joining today. And for anybody who is joining this as a recording, thank you for listening all the way through. Very happy to be contacted with any questions or comments. And I wish you an amazing start to the new school year. I hope you've got your new stationery. I've got mine. I'm all set and just sorting out my notebooks for who's who with supervision and what's going where. Got all my color coding going on, and that feels great actually. I've still got a pile of filing from the previous academic year to